I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land we are recording on, the Camaragal and the Guringai peoples, to their elders past, present and emerging, and we celebrate the ongoing connections to land and water. Resilience and transformation highlight how overcoming adversity can lead to profound personal growth and to inspire others. Our guest, Mick Miller, epitomises these qualities. Growing up with early responsibilities on Scotland Island in Sydney and later becoming a coach at the Australian Institute of Sport, Mick faced immense challenges, including a life-altering battle with throat cancer. His story of recovery and advocacy continues to inspire many. Get ready to be moved by Mick Miller's incredible journey of resilience and transformation.
Welcome to Sharing Stories, Changing Lives. The host, Karen Sander, has the privilege of interviewing individuals from all walks of life, each with their own powerful and inspiring stories. The guests share their life experiences, and in doing so, they celebrate the transformative magic of storytelling. To learn more, visit www.thestoryroom.au and explore the private membership area, the Backstage Pass.
Well, welcome, Mick Miller.
Karen, thanks so much for your time.
I want to go back to, I met you in the 90s and you were, very tanned, very curly hair, a big bright smile, a loud laugh and a good one-liner.
Yeah, Karen, pretty much I still got all that, maybe a little bit less hair, but yeah, I think I'm still ticking those boxes, which is, pretty lucky after all those years.
Thanks for reaching out to me recently to share your story. Look, you grew up in the most idyllic island in Sydney, Scotland Island. It's not near Scotland, it's in Sydney on the northern beaches. It's such a pristine environment. How did this environment shape your outlook on life and work?
Really incredibly lucky to have grown up in this little tiny community. Back then there wasn't a lot of houses. There was about 8 of us on the school ferry going to school every day. And, and to the kids, it was basically our playground. It was our island that we used to have so many great adventures on our push bikes, cubby houses, rowing boats, sinking boats, oyster cuts, you name it. We were no trouble, but just so many adventures. And there was no time to watch TV because there was just so much to do on the island.
Wild and feral, I'd like to call you.
Yeah, look, the island in the Western Foreshores, the bays still attract quite a unique brand of person. And really all that's really expanded is that, as the community's just got bigger and there's a huge variety of people that live in this area, from writers to politicians to actors to actresses to bricklayers, builders to wharf builders, the ferry drivers, the painters. It's just this really great little hub I was really grateful to be part of. Back then, and not that I live on the island anymore, but I live over in the Western Shores in a little bay called Elvina Bay, and really grateful for the whole experience.
Your life and work life started quite early back in the days when you lived on the island. Tell us about that.
To go to school, we had to catch the school ferry every day, and the school ferry was the milk and paper run. I was lucky enough to step into that job as the last girl had finished her year 12 studies and was leaving high school. So I got the job to be the milk and paper boy. That meant I had to jump on that school ferry every day of the year, even on school holidays and Christmas Day, to deliver the milk and paper for the island in the bay. So it took about an hour and a bit of responsibility, and couldn't fall in the milk and papers on the jetties, on the private jetties, and had to pick up the empty bottles and jump on the ferry, and windy and waves and seagulls and everything else. So it was a really exciting way to start the day. And I got paid to go to school, so I could never wag school, but that didn't really bother me too much. I really enjoyed school, but it was a really great opportunity to not just learn about delivering milk and papers, but learning about the sea, the tide, the wind, the moon, the stars. I had a couple of incredible mentors on the ferries that really, really looked after me in many, many ways.
Well, you learnt to drive a ferry?
Yeah, well, by the time I was 16, I was working on those ferries every weekend as a deckhand, and I turned 16 on a Friday afternoon, and I got my ferry ticket that Friday, and the company, was so impressed that they offered me a job to drive the ferry on the weekend from then on. So now I am carrying, 16 with a little bit of bravado, a Mars bar pimple on my chin, and pretty much so asking every single girl her phone number on the ferry, whoever got on the ferry, and trying to collect the fares, which was, I think, 50 cents for adults and 25 cents for kids, and drive a ferry for 12 hours a day with a lot of responsibility. Like a ferry that carries 60 people at 16, driving the ferry, around the Church Point, Pittwater region was Saturday and Sunday, 12 hours on shift, driving that ferry and being really not hitting any boats, not smashing into jetties, had to look after the boat, keep the boat clean, help people on and off the ferry. So it was a lot of responsibility really early in my life.
Here in Australia, you can't even get a driver's license at 16.
Yeah, things were a little bit different back then. And, it was a really strict testing to get the ferry license. It was like nearly 3-hour verbal examination at the Maritime Services Board with Kevin Campbell. I didn't look 16. I looked a lot younger. I was just really fortunate that I had some really great mentors as a kid who showed me how to drive the ferry and look after the ferry and be courtesy to people, all those things that I was just really, really, really lucky to have such a great pack of people around me to support me at the time.
Such a great foundation in life. So from there, you've done some amazing things. I know your parents helped you to start buying a piece of land, did I hear?
Well, 16 was a big year, and by the time I was 16, I saved all my money from doing the milk and paper run, so I had enough money for half a block of land in Elvina Bay. I remember going home for my 16th birthday, and I had just moved out of home. I'd moved into a little boat shed that I was renting. I was driving the ferry every weekend, and I just started my first year apprenticeship as a boat builder as well. And I went home thinking, I knew the parents had bought this block of land in the bay. And I thought, you know what, I've got enough money for half of it. And they're going to be such great parents that they're going to give me the other half for my birthday. And I went home. The old man gave me an envelope and he said, mate, we haven't given you the other half of the block of land. We went to the bank and we got you a loan from the bank at 19% interest rate.
Oh, my gosh.
And we'll guarantee the loan, but you're going to have to pay it off. And that meant from that day on, I worked every single day of the year. I just could not afford not to work. So I was paying rent, first year apprenticeship wage, driving the ferries every weekend, every every public holiday, Christmas Day, Easter. I was just 7 days a week working just to keep on top of a mortgage. No car. I'd go to a party, Karen, and if I met you, I'd ask you I didn't ask you what your name was. I asked you if you had a car. And if you said yes, then I'd ask you out because I had no way of picking you up.
So, Mick, your middle name must have been hardworking.
It just sort of came through the family in a generational way that you weren't going to be loved unless you worked. And that came from my dad, his dad, to my great-grandfather. They were all still alive. I was really lucky here that, I got to meet Pop, who was my great-granddad, who worked on the railways, as a boilermaker. And you didn't walk in the door unless you'd done a 10-hour day. And that's just how that generation was.
Yeah, they were tough.
There was no one else at 16 in my group that had a block of land.
It's pretty amazing, but I know it taught you some tough lessons. You've done some amazing things. Let's jump forward a bit to the next challenges you took up yourself because you're very resilient. You've certainly done a lot of things.
Got up one morning. I'd finished my time as a boat builder. I was still driving boats and I thought, it's time for a change. So I a little bit overweight. I thought I'm going to get myself really fit. By this stage, I'd built a house on that block of land. I started, I went to the gym and started getting really, really fit, like really, really fit. So I enjoyed all the training and all the, everything that was going on about it. And then I thought, why not go the next challenge? And that would be, why don't I learn how to row a single rowing shell? Got this beautiful bay on Pittwater. why don't I, start training and take that on as an opportunity to get really, really fit and change my lifestyle. Now, it wasn't all about work, Karen. My social outlets at the time, it was a fairly big drinking culture. At the end of every day, you had to drink 5 beers and celebrate that you got through your day. My dad was a pretty big, that's how he operated as a builder. There was a lot of people at Church Point every day of the week that were celebrating with a drink. I just got around that crowd one night and I thought, there's just more to my life than just doing this. So I broke out of that crowd. And no disrespect, they all good people, and I just thought, no, I'm going to do more with my life. And it's been really interesting because there's people still in that crowd, haven't spoken to me since because I haven't gone back to that crowd. So I got really fit, and I learned how to row this rowing boat on the bay here. I had a really incredible coach, George, who lived around the corner. He was an ex-rower, and we rowed in every single condition known to man. Headwinds, tailwinds, side winds. In rowing, in that type of rowing, they usually don't row in anything over 5 or 6 knots, but we were out there on 25 knots, 30 knots of breeze. George just said, look, I'm going to teach you how to row. Yeah, for the next couple of years, that's what we did. I just learned how to row, and I lifted a lot of weights and got myself really strong.
I know a little bit about Pittwater where you're talking about, and when the winds blow, they blow.
Yeah, look, that boat was a submarine at times. But George, we didn't stop. We just kept rowing and rowing and rowing. And I just kept eating really well, and I wasn't drinking at all. And, I was working part-time now in the gym as a trainer. So I was got out of boats completely. I wasn't working on any boats. Things were really, really tight. And I had a really great gym instructor who owned the gym. I just got so interested in the whole thing. And I said, you know what? His name was Rod Hinchy. I said, Rod, I want to become a coach. And he said, well, if you want to become a coach, you might have to go to uni. And I said, well, I haven't got any money to go to uni. And he said, look, I can help you become really, really good as a really great trainer, but you're going to have to put some hours in. And I said, that's okay. I'm prepared to do whatever. I would start work at 5 o'clock in the morning, finish at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then have the middle of the day off, and then get back there at 4 in the afternoon and finish at 10 o'clock at night.
Dedication.
Yeah, massive dedication. Still no car, riding everywhere on a push bike. And at the end of the day, Rod would go, okay, let's use Karen as an example. She sprained her ankle, and Mick, here's 3 books with 3 chapters that you've got to read. And I want a 1-page written report on my desk tomorrow morning at 5:30 before the gym opens on how you would fix Karen's ankle. But you've got to read these out. You've got to read these books. No computer back then. So I'd come home 10 o'clock at night, have dinner, 11, research, how to, fix someone's ankle, write a handwritten report by hand, and have it on his desk at 5:30 the next morning.
Wow, that's dedication too.
Yeah,
you're amazing. You're a bit like a machine, I think.
Well, it's more along the lines, Karen, that if you're really focused, if you're really prepared to do whatever it's going to take to get you, to that level. And I told Rod, I really wanted to become a coach for the Olympics. I wanted to become a strength and conditioning coach / rehab coordinator, coach for an Olympic team. And I knew that everyone I was going up against had a uni degree. And I thought, right. And his question was, what are you prepared to do? And sure enough, I was prepared to do anything. I went through some small courses on weekends, sat at the front of the classroom. I got to know the teachers really well, and I just really, really put in. So it's really interesting when you put that much dedication into something, all the other things sort of fade away a little bit. You're happy to eat a can of baked beans for dinner because you're just so focused on achieving your goal.
You said you gave away rowing. What led up to you giving away rowing?
I was still working it sort of together there with the gym and the rowing. And then I got to a stage where I went down to Mossman Rowers through a really great connection, Ian Smith, who was a really great rower and a really good America's Cup sailor as well, and a really great bloke. Got introduced down there, and Ian was pretty keen to help me, but the rest of the team down at Mossman were like, mate, you're not 6 foot tall and you're never going to make it. So, you might as well just leave and save your time. I kept going back down there a few times, and then I eventually got an invite to work to row with the sculling team. And the sculling team were about 10 really, really good men and women rowers and boats. And the coach said, mate, Mick, you're going to get really fit. Yeah, we'll teach you how to race, but I don't think you'll win any races for the whole year. So I used to train with this team, and oh my gosh, to be left for dead by a woman rower to 500 meters on a rowing course was like, yeah, it was just amazing how strong and fit all these people were. And I just kept coming back, and I kept racing and racing, and not winning any races for like 2 years. And then the big day came, Karen, where we're at Sydney Rowing Club, and all the rowers at the start line all knew me really well. They were all really polite and friendly, and they said, "Hey, Mick, we know it after about 200 meters, we're going to have to leave you. And we know that you're going to come last, but Mick, thanks for coming down and racing with us." And that race started, and the weather gods came, and this big motherly southerly came through the fleet. And it really got really windy on the race course. And none of these rowers had ever rowed in anything rough. And they all fell out of the boats, and I finished the race and won the race. And I waited for them. It was the first time that I ever waited for them to finish the finishing line, and I clapped them all and thanked them all for coming, and gave them a little bit of cheek. And that day, I remember ringing George, my rowing coach, and saying, "George, I'm retiring from rowing because I've won my first and last race."
What was George's reaction?
He was completely over the moon because he never thought I was going to win a race either. But what it did, it just taught me a lot of discipline. It taught me, never give up. It also taught me what goes through, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally while you're a rower boat at that level. I felt all the pain of the lactic acid, the lack of breath. I experienced all that. And believe it or not, I probably had more respect around Mossman Rowing Club because he was a guy who would ride his bike, from Elvina Bay and go to rowing training. And he was too small, and he was never going to make it, but he just kept showing up and showing up and showing up. Didn't mind coming last at every training session. Didn't mind, being the last one off the water. Didn't mind jumping back on his bike in the pouring rain and riding back home. It was definitely character building and something. I've still got some incredible friends from those days even now.
If you're interested in getting more involved in our community, connecting with people who share your interests, you can do this by visiting our website at www.thestoryroom.au.
Well, it really prepared you for the next journey in your life, the Australian Institute of Sport. So let's go there.
That was really lucky, Karen, where I was now really, really fit. I was now working in the gym for Rod. I was making, some money enough to pay off a mortgage and feed myself. And then I went to all the sailing clubs in Pittwater, and I spoke to all the kids. And I said, how about we get off the cans of Coke and the packs of chips, and how about we get really fit and go sailing? And all the kids went, what, Mick, how about you go get nicked, because we want to drink cans of Coke and eat packets of chips and bugger off. So I went home and changed my marketing procedure and went to all the parents. And I said, Karen, why don't you give me little Johnny and Susie? I'll make sure that they clean their bedroom, give you a hug before they go to bed every night, and take out the garbage and empty the dishwasher. And the parents went, you know what? You're going to have little Johnny and Susie for more than a week. You're going to have them for the whole year if you want. So these little Johnny Susies were now training with me on a little beach up at Avalon and at Bayview. We used to do these beach sessions. And over a year, these little Johnny and Susie started winning races. And these little Johnny and Susie started knowing how to shake someone's hand and hug their mum and dad and be on time for training and not take shortcuts. The parents were like, wow, this is a bit more than just getting fit for sailing. This is like getting fit for life. Mm. So the kids started doing really well, and they started winning club races and state races. And then they started winning Australian titles, these little 12 and 13-year-old kids. And then this incredible opportunity came, Karen, where I got picked up by a professional team called Prudential, which was an 18-foot skiff sailing team on Sydney Harbour. And they were on a circuit that would be televised and shown at the lunchtime on Channel 9 when the cricket was on. So the cricketers would go and have lunch, and this 18-foot skiff race would be shown on TV. And this was a fully sponsored team, and they picked me up and employed me. And they did really, really well. We won the state, the Australian, and the world titles in 1 year. Mm. And from that, I gained a scholarship to go to the Institute of Sport as a strength and conditioning coach for sailing.
an incredible journey, and it obviously comes from all that you'd done over all those decades.
It wasn't just, getting fit. It was about being on time with the ferries. It was about being polite. It was about being mentored by some really great people. It was also being, mentored if you stepped out of line. You had some really good people to get you back into line. Not that I was in any trouble or anything, but it takes the whole village to produce a man, as they say in Fiji.
Well, let's talk about some of your challenges and triumphs coaching elite and Olympic athletes.
Well, that was pretty lucky. I went to the AIS as a strength and conditioning coach for sailing, and I was given 27 subjects that I had to study online. No computers back then. Well, big computers, but no laptops. If you failed a subject, you were out. There's a lot of study to do. And I was sort of assigned to the Australian sailing team, but through a little bit of political stuff that was going on, that sort of came to a bit of a grinding halt. And I think within about an hour, some contacts from the Australian rowing team contacted me and heard and went, you know what, Mick, we want you to be part of the rowing team. I'm now based in Canberra, living there full time under scholarship, and now I'm assigned to the Australian rowing team via the New South Wales rowing team. So I'm now traveling with the squad, rubbing bodies down, doing my study, strapping people up, running the Swiss ball sessions, running all the weight sessions, making sure everyone's tucked into bed at 9 o'clock, looking after 40, 50 athletes with the state squad, earning my stripes. From that, was able to be selected to go and be picked for the Australian team to go to the next World Championships, which were a couple of years away before the Olympics. So now I'm traveling the state, the country, in the world with a gear bag, studying still and working with 50 or 60 athletes with the Australian rowing team as we prepared for the 96 Olympics.
Like, you just must have felt like you'd reached the absolute pinnacle of your sports, and what an amazing triumph for you.
Again, Karen, a really great team, some incredible mentors, senior coaches that have that responsibility to wear a green and gold jersey, to wear a green and gold blazer, to understand why the kangaroo and emu are on the coat of arms, to know that kid from the Bay, who had a red hot go, still didn't have a uni degree, had worked his way into an environment which was incredibly stressful, incredibly demanding. I'll be honest, when you're in that environment, everything else comes second. The team has to come first. You're told this before you join the team. Yeah, you've got to be to be an athlete or a coach in that environment. It's a really tough gig.
Any particular memorable moment in your coaching career that had a significant impact on you?
I've been able to use every moment now. There were some times where I was probably resentful a little bit on a couple of moments, but now it's more like, wow, everything's been able to fall into place, and I can see why all this stuff has happened. Yeah.
How many Olympics did you actually attend?
Really fortunate to be involved, have been involved with athletes going to the last 7 Olympics.
Wow.
So I haven't necessarily gone to the actual, to the games, but it's been more like getting these people prepared to make selection. Just finished with the Paris Olympics, where I've been behind the scenes with a couple of guys for the last couple of years, working as a performance coach with their mindset. Today's technology, I haven't necessarily have to be part of the Olympic squad to be part of a team.
Some things that have happened in the not so distant past that sort of brought you to a grinding halt. Would you share those?
Maybe not so much a grinding halt, but definitely an opportunity to recalibrate a few things. And there was a time there, Karen, you're self-centered. Everything was career. Pretty well hardwired the way I was as a kid. I had a little successful strength and conditioning business at the Prince Alfred Yacht Club, 8 people employed, 400 people coming through the door every week, car accident, post-cancer, prenatal, postnatal, kids coming through, 8 staff, and still being involved with some Olympic guys, involved now with some NRL teams with the Manly Seagulls, and working overseas with Fiji Rugby in Japan. So it was all go. No idea, Karen, how to accept and just love myself for who I was. And this came from which hasn't been mentioned, but if we go right back to that first couple of questions, one of the big reasons why I was working so much on the island as a kid was I was going through and experiencing my parents going through a divorce, which probably witnessed a lot of things that a lot of kids shouldn't have witnessed. And I'd never seen two people who, once loved each other, went through so much of basically, trying to destroy each other. So my idea, I suppressed all that I was witnessing in that environment to go jump on the ferry and get away from it all. And so sure enough, what you suppress, what you don't address will surely come up sooner or later. And yeah, it definitely came up in a big way where completely out of the field, I was diagnosed with cancer.
That must have been a real blow.
It was a bit more than a blow. It was still wasn't quite sure why. Went through the 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, depression, bargaining. I'd only say probably in the last couple of years I've got to acceptance of the whole thing. It really stopped me in my tracks. And I think I really feel if I didn't get cancer, I don't think I'd still be here now. I think I would have passed away. It was a tap on the shoulder from whoever to go, right, Mick, we're going to take you completely out of this zone. We're going to break you right down to nearly nothing. We're going to nearly kill you to keep you alive. And then you're going to have the chance to rebuild yourself. And that's exactly what happened, Karen. 3 operations in hospital as a precautionary, fell apart on the second day, went from 75 kilos to 49 kilos, ended up in the hospital for 70 days straight. 25 of them, 3 weeks was in an isolation ward where no one could come and visit. Even the medical team only came in there for a minute or 2 a day. And then didn't walk out of the place, got carried out of the place. And to be able to pull yourself up on a chair felt like doing a 100-kilo chin-up.
Not very pleasant experience for someone especially for someone who's been so active.
Well, even that, what you just mentioned there, I got to the stage in the hospital where there were so many lessons in the place. I didn't brand it good or bad. I didn't brand it pleasant or unpleasant. I just branded the whole thing an experience. And that word feeds to me of like, wow, I'm a bit more inviting to go to an experience. I learn from an experience. I like a challenge. I don't wish it upon anybody, but I had to be really, really careful of what I was feeding myself with my inner dialogue and my inner conversation while I was in that place.
This was transformative for you.
It was massive. Like I had no idea how to love myself or like myself. Everything was never good enough. When you're in a coaching environment, you're always looking at how can we keep on improving. Really well drilled into me. So all that had to be extracted out of me. A lot of emotions, a lot of tears, a lot of flashbacks. A lot of things were addressed while I was in the hospital. An incredible team of medical people, some incredible friends. My older sister, Laura, stepped right up to the plate. We didn't have a huge connection maybe prior, but we really connected during all that. And yeah, it was a really, it was basically, I felt like I had to go out to the desert and really learn about myself again. And that's what I did.
How's this experience shaped your views on health and resilience, and what message would you like to put out there for others?
Yeah, it's definitely really changed everything. And in many ways, like, I used to be really fit, physically fit, but spiritually and emotionally, I wasn't fit at all. My value of health has changed somewhat, where it's now includes emotionally, spiritually, financially, nutritionally, hydrationally. It's not just physical anymore. It covers a bigger range. So to the people that are listening, I mean, yeah, if you can learn how to be a bit kinder to yourself and understand if you're not kind to yourself, where it comes from, so you can learn how to be kinder to yourself. It's going to make the journey a little bit more enjoyable.
Being kind to yourself for many of us is very, very hard. And I think internally, the way we speak to ourselves, you would never even say to your best friend or your children.
Yeah, you're spot on, Karen. And that comes from a level of awareness. I wouldn't have got my level of awareness unless I would have gone 70 days in hospital. Mm-hmm. The nursing coordinator, Paula McLeod, incredible lady, still is, still in contact with her quite a lot. But I remember me going in there and, her just saying, Mick, your biggest strength will be your biggest weakness in here. She was pretty well spot on. I mean, I went in there with so much ego and bravado and thinking I was just incredibly bulletproof. And my God, I basically had to surrender. I had to take off all my armor and strip back completely bare. So, I could learn how to be kind and compassionate to myself and allow the others. Karen, I was brought up in a family that you never complained. You never took a day off. You never took an aspirin. And here I am with the highest octane drugs in the world getting pumped into me to keep me alive, and a 33-person medical team trying to keep me alive as well. And for the first week, I rejected all of them. And it wasn't until Paula had a little bit of a whisper in my ear one day going, Mick, you've got to surrender. If you don't surrender, I don't know if you're going to get through this.
Paula sounds really wise. I'm just going to say, I'm going to repeat what you said. Your biggest strength will be your biggest weakness.
Paula is incredibly streetwise. She didn't come down on the last shower. She's incredibly compassionate in a really loving way, and she's also her timing of delivery is absolutely impeccable. Like, she is an Olympic coach in that hospital.
These days, you're a performance coach and a motivational speaker. What are your main goals and aspirations?
I actually call it the right path. I feel like I'm a lot more on the right path now, where I was able to really recalibrate myself and go, these are all the great things I'm doing. How can I expand on that a little bit more? And some of those things that I'm maybe not so good at, those are the things I really need to keep on supporting myself with. I put myself first and foremost every day in an unselfish way, and I've been very, very fortunate to share those experiences and those learnings with others, which you could say forms into my job, where I work as a performance enhancement coach for individuals, organizations and teams who want to empower and enhance themselves with whatever they're up to in their lives. Could be a CEO, could be a director of a company, could be a single mum, could be an Olympic athlete, could be a Year 12 kid. So I've got incredible, stable of people that I work closely with, and some organizations as well. I've been really, really lucky to deliver that type of work that all aligns with my why, with my values, with my strengths, how I want to communicate to myself, helps with my productivity, not so much in busyness, but what I want to deliver to myself every day.
There's a few things you've just said. Number one, first and foremost, looking after you, putting you first. And you said about single mums. I think a lot of mums don't put themselves first, whether single or not, that they put their families before them. And I think the other thing that you mentioned was values, and people are starting to understand it's really important to know your values.
Yeah, you're spot on, Karen, because through all the Olympic, success and all the coaching, and I knew the values of all the teams I was working with, but I didn't know my values, and I'd never ever really sat down to work them out. In that hospital, I really had the opportunity to discover why am I on the earth? Not my work why, but my personal why. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why I'm here? It's not necessarily to please others. What about changing that around a little bit more, Mick, to help yourself out a little bit? And that now flows into your communication to yourself. Put yourself first. Yeah, you need to be saying some really nice things to yourself. And Karen, I've still got a wall mop of hair that needs a haircut at the moment, and I definitely look like a Smurf first thing in the morning, but I don't mind telling myself first thing in the morning that I love myself and I'm ready to accept myself for the rest of the day and to enjoy what I want to do here. So I couldn't do that before I got sick.
If someone wants to find out more about you, your coaching, what you do, how you can help them, how do they find you?
Yeah, look, Karen, a great question. Pretty easy. If you go to a website called therightpath.net.au, or if you Google Mick Miller, there's another website called mickmiller.com.au as well, or just give me a call on my mobile, 0427 043 867. Happy to have a chat, and I'm sure the right people will connect for the right reasons.
It's a very important story, Mick, and this is all about sharing stories that can change lives.
Karen, thanks so much for the time, and thanks to the listeners for listening to the show. Much appreciated.
Thank you for tuning in to Sharing Stories, Changing Lives. We'd like to invite you to support us by purchasing a backstage pass, costing about the same as 2 cups of coffee each month. With the Backstage Pass, you'll gain access to workshops and exclusive content, including videos from our live events. You can do this by visiting our website at www.thestoryroom.au. We can continue to show that sharing stories changes lives.